Okay, so when we left off the last time, I was talking about how to select a shell. And what I said was I was going with a graphical user face using Wayland, SDDM, OpenBox, and some Qt based desktop environment like LXQT. And as you may noticed, I'm actually currently in KDE, and I'm not even in Gentoo. So what happened? Well, first of all, I had a lot of work to do, and I just didn't have time for this. I mean, this is just a personal project of mine for fun to do this, even though I will have a lot of benefit from this when working as well. But still, I'm just doing this for fun. This series of videos. So I had to let it go for a while because I was just too busy to spend any time with it. And then during those times when I had some time, I ran into some difficulties. For example, I said I wanted OpenBox. Well, as it turns out, the OpenBox developers have decided that they don't want to support Wayland. So then I can't use Wayland, which I really wanted to do because I think that there are many benefits with using Wayland, even though it's not entirely stable yet, but still. So I had to make some new choices. I could just switch Wayland for Xorg. Easy solution. But I mean, I want to create something more long-term. So because of that, I decided that no, I'm gonna stick with Wayland, and maybe I can switch OpenBox for just KWin, which is the window manager of KDE. And it looked nice. It looked like it should be a good solution to just use KWin and nothing else from the KDE suite. And then on top of KWin, I could add some Qt environment. But again, it takes a lot of time to set something like that up. And I just didn't have that much time. So finally, I just said that, well, it's better that I just have my system up and running and I can fine-tune it as time goes on. Just throw KDE in there, the full KDE suite, and don't care about anything. But I had a lot of difficulties configuring KDE to work under Gentoo. And eventually, because I was very time constrained, I just gave up. And I said, I'm just going to move to something more straightforward. So what do we have that is very configurable but more straightforward than Gentoo? Well, there's obviously ArchLinux. So I went for ArchLinux and I installed it, and ArchLinux should be more straightforward, but for some reason ArchLinux just didn't want to talk to my graphics card. I have a standard Intel i965 graphics card. Nothing shouldn't be difficult, but for whatever reason the drivers didn't load properly, and this and that. I just had black screens all the time, which with my time constraints was kind of frustrating, because if I'm gonna spend time solving those kind of issues, it would be better for me to spend that time in Gentoo. because then I would get exactly what I want. So I was a bit tired, and then I got the spur of the moment. I thought, well, why don't I take another look at Funtoo? So Funtoo is a spin-off or a fork or whatever you want to call it from Gentoo, and Funtoo has solved some things in interesting ways. For example, when you install Gentoo, you have to compile the kernel, and a lot of people think that it takes a lot of time to go through all the settings that you need and learn everything about compiling a kernel. And even if you want to set up your system in great detail, like myself personally, I don't really care about compiling a kernel with all those details. And I don't care for learning all those details, because the next time I buy a new computer, I have to change everything anyway. So with Funtoo, they just ship Debian, the Debian kernel that you can install. That's the default way to install Funtoo, is just to install a Debian kernel, which is a kernel that has all the important settings, and it's going to function with pretty much everything. So it's making installation a lot faster and easier and more fun. And if you want to compile your kernel like you do in Gentoo, of course you can do that, no problem, but you don't have to. It is possible that you could install that the Debian kernel in Gentoo as well. I didn't really look that up, but it's one of the things that makes Funtoo more fun. Another thing that makes Funtoo more fun is we're still using Emerge for package management and installing things, but the difference from Gentoo is, I think we should be able to see it here. What? Oh, I'm not root. So when we sync in Funtoo, as you can see, it says git fetch origin depth 1. And this is something actually that I thought about when I was playing around with Gentoo, that if you're going to install everything from source, why don't you just connect it directly to the git packages? And well, great men things alike, or something, because in Funtoo that's exactly what you get. They're gonna fetch directly from the git tree whatever the developers are pushing, which could be a great method to keep up to date on everything. But there's a downside, which is that in almost any Linux distribution, you're gonna have some mirrors where you push files out to mirrors all over the world, so that you have a local server where you download whatever packages you need. And since Funtoo is using Git, Git is on an American server, or I think it's American, I'm not sure actually. But for me, who is currently sitting in Thailand, I have a 100 kilobyte per second connection to those servers. So it takes a long time to download the source code. But whatever, it's fine. It's just, I mean, you're gonna wait for hours anyway for compiling a lot of these things, like the Office suites and the browsers and everything, and KDE now that I have that, because I was just I don't think I had the time to put on making all the details one by one. So because of that, I threw in KDE and I have everything now. But so I'm gonna start peeling things off from this installation. But basically, I had to abandon the idea I had with this series of videos. I had an idea in my head about how I wanted to do it, to build my own desktop environment with everything, and to show each step of adding things to that desktop environment. But in order to do it like that, I have to spend so much time on it that it's just not feasible with my current situation in life. But just to show you, one of the things that I want to set up is I'm using two different terminal emulators here, as you may have noticed. One of them is terminology from the elementary OS distribution. So terminology is a really nice terminal emulator. I really like it. It looks very pretty, and I mean, console that ships with KDE is fine by itself. You notice some differences straight off. I mean, both of them have color coding, but for some reason terminology, when you list the contents of a directory, it's just there's no color coding by default. I should be able to configure this, but I didn't have time to look at anything like configuring stuff. I just installed everything. With console, that kind of color coding for files and directories is going to be by default. This is the same folder that I'm showing here. But with terminology, you have this extra terminology ls command, which for the same photos is going to pull up some thumbnails and stuff. And I can actually click one of these thumbnails in the terminal to just pull up some preview of that photo. And even if I choose a GIF, the GIF will animate in the terminal, which I think is really nice, because I enjoy using the terminal, but I also enjoy this easy way of pulling up previews of files. So, but I don't want to use the elementary OS for various reasons. I mean, elementary OS is a fine distribution. I could use it for many things, but I don't want to use it as my own default environment. So I got Funtoo. I'm gonna peel things off, and I'm gonna end up with something like terminology and something else. I'm gonna remove this ugly KDE menu. I don't like that. But I mean, there were a couple of people who asked, like, can you do a video for how to install and something like that? I don't think, I mean, when you install something, you should follow directions from a wiki or something. I don't think watching a YouTube is the best way to do it. But even if you want to watch YouTube, there are already YouTube videos who do that. But just to show you what I do when I install Linux, I go through a wiki first, and I check what do I need to do, and I put up some headlines and something that I think I am going to do. And then as I go through it, as I go through the installation of actually installing everything, what I do is I just add things and I change it and I end up with something that is kind of like a bash script or a shell script that essentially I could almost, I mean, not the way that I wrote it here, but I could almost just run this as a script and just automatically install everything. It's not quite like that, but it's almost like that. And I think this is a good way of keeping this, because this text file is added to my Dropbox, so it's always going to be up to date. So if I need to reinstall my entire system, whenever I change something to the system, I'm going to go here and I'm going to make that change. So I mean, I'm not gonna I'm not gonna change much about how to configure the system. I'm not gonna change the use flags that much, but I am going to add specific use flags for some packages, which actually I didn't do yet. Let's use this one. And we go to etc portage package use. So here you see that I have a number of files which, if we look at whatever, EFL, I don't even know what that is, but there's a devlib EFL that I had to add some specific use flags for that specific package in order to make it work with everything else I have installed in a good way. Inkscape, I added dbus x for some messages, xif for JPEG information, something, JPEG, LaTeX, NLS, Visio, those kind of things that are nice to have sometimes. For Wayland, it's a bit more complicated because I added some flag to auto update, auto unmask or something like that, which builds a whole file with more things. And there you can also see that this specific use flag is required by all of these other packages. So anyway, I didn't add this yet, but I mean, normally in this file, when I do something like that, I'm gonna add something like somewhere here, echo lib whatever, dev libs EFL something here to etc portage EFL. Okay, so when I do some change, I'm gonna add this line here to this script so that I can just reinstall the entire system. But since the current system I have is just a quick mashup, I just installed everything, started it, and here's this video. So because of that, I don't really have that much added here yet, but I will flesh this out. And actually I mean to change this a bit, actually quite a lot, because I mean to peel things off and just have my own stuff installed. But that is a long-term project, and right now I just want to get started doing some work. So the purpose of doing this video was just to show kind of that I more or less abandoned the entire project, and maybe I will come back to it someday, and maybe I will start over someday. But right now I'm very happy actually with moving to Funtoo instead of Gentoo. I feel a lot better about it, and a lot of things are just work a lot easier. I still have all the control of setting things up. I still have the emerge tool for installing packages. I still have use flags to have very detailed control over what the packages are included. I still have aches to search for stuff, and I can see all of the use flags that a package has, what it is currently installed with, if I want to change something. I have all of those tools easily available, which I really like, but it's a lot easier still than Gentoo, and it is a lot more enjoyable and fun to use Funtoo rather than Gentoo. So if anyone is thinking about installing Gentoo, I would really recommend looking at Funtoo first, because it's just, at least in its current implementation, it seems to be a lot better than Gentoo. The developers of Funtoo have also promised that, well, they're gonna change a lot of things. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe it won't stay great. Maybe it will be even better. Who knows? Right now it's really nice. I like it. So that is all for this time. Maybe I will return with more. We'll see. Yeah. So long for now.